Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back partner, Ice Miller Law Firm, Mayor Michael Coleman.
Well, good morning, everybody. Again, glad to see you all here. We have an exciting lineup coming up right after me. So you need to come back after I sit down because this is the real deal that's about to come out to this stage right now. So let me start at the end. We talk about smart cities. Let me start at the end here. The city of Columbus won the Department of Transportation grant for smart cities that provided $40 million to provide smart city applications to the city of Columbus. And that was in the summer of 2016. And as a result of that $40 million, it leveraged another $90 million from the private sector, the business community, that helped get that grant in the first place. A great collaborative effort. Now that investment is now upwards to $500 million being invested in the city of Columbus in an unprecedented partnership between the city of Columbus and the business community. The winning was great. Winning that grant was a great thing for our community, but it's the way it was won, how it was won, what they did to win that grant, and why the city of Columbus was picked over six or seven other cities. San Francisco, Pittsburgh, Austin, Denver, along with other cities. And it's the consequence of what I call the Columbus story. And the Columbus story focuses on collaboration between the public and the private community. And I call it intentional collaboration. The city of Columbus is the epicenter of economic growth in the Midwest. The city is now, you may be surprised to hear this, the largest city in the state of Ohio. You can put the cities of Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Akron within the city of Columbus. It has a 3% unemployment rate, is among the fastest growing cities in the nation, the fastest growing city in the Midwest, has the most business starts. It's considered the #1 tech city in the nation now by publications, the #1 city for women CEOs in the city of Columbus, a city of global immigration and national migration into the city of Columbus. The land of opportunity, the new mayor, Mayor Andrew J. Ginther, calls Columbus the land of opportunity, and a city that is blessed with so many things in addition to having extraordinary modesty, not telling its story to the nation, transformed to now a city of swagger, to tell about this great feat, this great partnership that will take Columbus to a new global city. So there's two kinds of cities in America. There's the 20th century cities, the cities whose best days are behind them, and the 21st century cities, whose cities are, the best days are in front of them. Columbus is in a renaissance with downtown growth, residential development, new investment, thousands and thousands of new jobs in the past few years, 160,000 new jobs in the city of Columbus as a result of this great collaboration between the public and private sectors. Now a city of what I call swagger, of confidence, able to talk about its successes whilst continuing to be modest. So the folks you hear from today have been the spear to getting Columbus the Smart Cities Grant and now a smart city. Spencer Reeder, Mark Dowd, Mike Stevens, and Alex Fisher. And I hope you'll enjoy this great interaction. Thank you.
Principal and owner, Deloitte Consulting, Mark Price.
Hello and good morning, everybody, and welcome to our session titled Columbus Goes Electric. And thank you, Mayor Coleman, for a wonderful setup for our conversation today. My name is Mark Price. I'm a vice chairman of Deloitte, and I lead our U.S. public sector practice and have been given the opportunity to work a little bit with the Columbus team over the last few months. It's been a great experience to meet the team, to learn a little bit more about the program. And we're going to hear a little bit more about that during the course of the conversation today. You heard 4 names when Mayor Coleman spoke. One of them is missing. One of them is stuck in traffic, testing the smart cities effort here in New York right now. But hopefully he'll be here in a minute or two. As we've gotten to work a little bit with the Smart Columbus team, a couple of things that really stand out to me that we've learned through that experience. The first is that Columbus really has something special in the way in which it has established this leadership coalition across the public sector, the private sector, and academia in Columbus. There really is something electric in the air about that combination, and I hope we can delve into that one a little bit during our conversation. The second point is that Columbus, as I assume everybody in this room will know already, has really done a terrific job of taking the success of the federal DOT and Vulcan grants and leveraging that to drive significant additional investment behind its program and really attracting energy behind the Smart Columbus effort. The third thing, and I know this is part of the theme of this whole conference, is that the Smart Columbus team has really focused on the human aspects of smart cities, not just pursuing new technology, but really thinking about how that new technology can unlock opportunities for the residents, for the constituents, for all the population across the region. So we're going to delve into that one a little bit more today. So we have a great team of panelists. I'm actually going to ask them to introduce themselves and give us a little bit of context about who they are, their role around smart cities, and specifically what their role is in Columbus. So let me start, if I can, with Alex.
So I'm Alex Fisher, President and CEO of the Columbus Partnership. It's great to be here with everyone. The Columbus Partnership's a group of 50 corporate leaders in our city who care passionately about all things Columbus and how to bring economic prosperity to our community. We are the partner with our mayor, as you'll learn, in the Smart Cities Initiative, bringing private sector resources and our corporate thinking and engagement to thinking about how we transform Columbus and are a model for the rest of the country as it relates to not only the deployment of technology, but improving the lives of our citizens, as you say, and a heavy emphasis on economic development and economic prosperity from the private sector's perspective.
Spencer.
Yeah, hi everybody, great to be here. I'm Spencer Reeder. I work for Vulcan, which is Paul Allen's holding company. Paul Allen, the co-founder of Microsoft. I run his philanthropy group that handles climate and energy issues. I think we'll get into this a bit, but we viewed the Smart City Challenge and our partnership with the DOT in this effort as a way to incentivize those cities that were really poised to take this next transformational step in mobility. Paul had been involved in competitions himself, has a lot of faith in the power of a competition to really bring forth and accelerate ideas. And so I guess we'll get into a bit more of that, but happy to be here. Thanks.
Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike Stevens. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for the City of Columbus. I've been in this job now for about 7 weeks, so I'm new to the effort. When Mayor Ginther asked me to come be the city's first Chief Innovation Officer, one of the real draws to it was not only the grants and the competition that the city had won, but the relationship and the partnership that we continue to have with our private sector and our civic leaders. Prior to coming back to Columbus, I was in the Chicago area, but before that, I was with the City of Columbus. So I knew the upward trajectory that the city was pursuing, and it was great to come back and be part of this and help shape the future of Smart Columbus and really be a testing ground for the country.
Great. Thank you. And Mark Dowd, former federal DOT leader, will be joining us shortly, hopefully in a minute or two here. But let's get underway with a few questions. Firstly, in my mind, is the question about what really differentiated Columbus in securing the Smart City Challenge grant. And perhaps, Spencer, you could address that question first. What was really different and unique about Columbus? What was so compelling about the opportunity there?
Yeah, and maybe as a means of conveying that, I'll talk a little bit about what went into the thinking when we first put this together. We met with the Secretary of Transportation at that time, Anthony Fox. He was the former mayor of Charlotte. We wanted to find medium to sort of on the smaller, large-sized cities in the U.S. that were willing to demonstrate what was possible. Paul Allen, when he tasked me to start thinking about what we might do, it was that phrase. I want to find a city that can demonstrate what's possible to the rest of the country, and really focusing resources on a city. So when the DOT and when our group put this together, and just to be clear, we were looking at this as a philanthropic opportunity. The funding that we put into this came from Paul Allen's foundation. The DOT was looking to catalyze a lot of really interesting technology, as Alex said, a way to reach parts of the community that had been underserved by using these advances in technology. And we had an idea of some of the cities that might apply. We announced the competition in December of the previous year, and the applications were due February 4th, which wasn't much time, particularly if you consider the holidays. So we were thinking 10 to 15 cities would apply. We got 78 applications from 30 different states in that time. So that, to us, demonstrated this great latent demand that cities had to look at transportation challenges and apply technology. Columbus emerged from those 78, first among a group of 7 finalists that included San Francisco, Portland, Denver, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Austin, Texas. Many of these cities had already been doing really great things in the smart city space and in transportation. And what emerged for Columbus was that their ambition was just as great as any of these other cities, and they were starting from a much lower point in terms of where they were in the transportation space. But it was a great narrative, and their ambition was incredible. And the fact that Alex is here, and Mike, he is emblematic of the commitment that the business community had made in that city to be partners with the mayor and the rest of the other stakeholders in the city of Columbus. So you saw this great sort of unified front from the city of Columbus between the business community, the various portions of city government, the county, the metro area, and they backed it up with a pretty serious commitment of $90 million of match. We put in $10 million, the DOT put in 40. City of Columbus came to the table with an additional 90. That was not insignificant. But it really was the quality of the application, the actual content, the substance of what they were proposing to do. Well, they also acknowledged, like, hey, we've got to learn about how to do this. So it was this willingness to learn, to be ambitious, aggressive, all the things we were looking for. And Columbus serves as a great example for cities, I think, across the country. And both, I think, Secretary Fox saw that, we saw that at Vulcan. It was just really this perfect combination of things that were fantastic. Yeah.
That's great. And Alex, you mentioned the role of the Columbus Partnership as part of that application process. Could you expand on that a little bit for us and help us understand how that functions, how it operates, and how you've been able to take this initial funding, the initial grant funding, and extend that beyond?
Yes, so the Harvard Business School teaches a case study every year called the Columbus Way. And it talks about a city that has 50 CEOs who get around a boardroom table and collaborates with its mayor. They call us the Goldilocks size, big enough to have scale to have some of the world's biggest companies, but then still small enough that you don't get overwhelmed in not being able to have relationships like you might in a city of this scale that we're sitting in. So Columbus is now a city that's just gone over the 2 million mark, fastest growing economy by most measures over the last couple of years of cities our size, so rapidly expanding. Offers a unique opportunity, but we still have this core CEO engagement with our government leaders, with our governor, with our mayor, with our county commissioners. There is this collaboration that occurs, and I remember coming back from the World Economic Forum in San Diego with Mayor Ginther. We had met with a lot of with Spencer and other US DOT folks that were taking a look at this, and we sparked an idea. Let's come up with the match. And by the way, it was $90 million matched against the 50, but it was Nationwide Insurance who's been looking at autonomous testing for the last decade. It was L Brands and Cardinal Health, who are two of the biggest logistics providers in the world. It was American Electric Power, who is totally changing a power infrastructure grid throughout the Midwest, and other private sector involvement that we're not just bringing money, but bringing expertise and willing to try to dig into this. But at the end of the day, it's about partnership and collaboration. And we don't have all the answers. I mean, I think the fun thing about this is we're living in the state of chaos. The world is coming at us so quickly, and we are absolutely committed to that playground of chaos, that playground that is changing so quickly, to be a part of the urban fabric that will define the cities of the future. And it's really exciting for us to be in that mix, to have a group of private leaders who are willing to put up their capital, who are willing to get involved with their companies, and then to do it with a mayor who will hire a chief innovation officer who first sparked this idea of going after that. So we took $90 million, pledged it against the 50, and said that's how you turn 50 into 140. And now 9 months later, it's $500 million of private sector investment that has rallied out of our community directly related to aspects of the smart cities activity. We've set a goal of $1 billion of private investment over the next 4 years. So it's really been one of these ballooning kind of activities in the community.
Sure, that's terrific and a great story. With that in mind, significant resources dedicated to this. Maybe, Mike, a question for you as the innovation officer, the innovation leader there in Columbus, which is really about the impact of that investment. What does it really mean for the community? I know we've read a lot about equal access, about opportunity, about economic impact for everyone, about ladders of opportunity. Could you speak to that a little bit for us?
Yeah, so for Smart Columbus to be successful, we're going to execute on the grants. We've made commitments to US DOT, we've made commitments to Vulcan that are important, that we want to go out and we're going to execute on that. We're going to put projects out on the roads and be testing. But for true success, we're focused on what's going to happen 4 years from now when the grants time period is over. And we have done the testing and we've delivered on the grants. How is that going to impact long-term for Columbus? How is that going to position Columbus in the Central Ohio region, in the Columbus region, in a way that it has a long-term growth impact to our economy? Mayor Ginther talks a lot about making sure that as we focus on new technology, we're not leaving behind our residents, and there's not a negative impact, and there's not a greater disparity in wealth and a greater income gap. So we're focused on, what's going to happen to our workforce? How do we make sure our workforce is trained and ready for this disruptive technologies and these new jobs that, quite honestly, I don't think we've identified yet? How are we going to make sure that mobility is the great equalizer? If you can't get to your doctor and keep your health, if you can't get a dependent to child care or dependent care, and you can't get to job training or get to work, it's going to be hard to get a job and keep a job. So we're really focused on making sure that mobility impacts all of our neighborhoods in our community, and the technology is uplifting for everybody.
That's great, right. Maybe a question for you, Spence. We talked a little bit about mobility there, but there's a significant energy component to this as well, and clearly the Vulcan grant is focused on that. Could you talk to us a little bit about what the goals and objectives of that Vulcan grant are, what the key elements of the scope of the program are?
Yeah, absolutely. When we at Vulcan and our philanthropy group were thinking about things to do with cities, seeing cities as really the agent for change and a lot of the challenges that the country's facing around energy and climate. This was actually just before, a few months before, it became apparent that transportation was going to be the #1 source of greenhouse gases in the United States. In February of 2016, transportation overtook electricity generation as the #1 source. It was not by accident that we tied our grant and the objectives on our grant to the electrical grid. And as Alex had mentioned, AEP, American Electric Power, operates in 11 states in the Midwest. They're really an iconic entity, an old school utility, if you will, with a new leader and a new vision for how they're going to enter the future of electricity. And they were very open to rethinking how this transformation in transportation would intersect with the conventional utility model. So our objectives were really twofold. It was around converting as many vehicles on the road in a city, and Columbus came, as I said, with a very ambitious plan, converting those to internal combustion engines to the electrified drivetrain, along with the decarbonization of the electrical grid. And you'll hear it from me a couple more times today, but the partnership that AEP offers in this project is really unprecedented. We're really excited about it. They're putting, not just money, but as Alex said, talent against the challenges and a lot of staff. And for us, ultimately, this is a climate change opportunity where cities are going to show the way forward. And our hope is that Columbus, what they learn, where they succeed, where they have challenges, other cities will be able to learn from that and chart their path forward. But this, I read a statistic just a few weeks ago that I had to reread about 3 times. The number of miles that Americans drive every day, aggregate miles that we drive in this country alone every day, is 8.5 billion miles per day.
Wow.
So if you understand that most of those miles are being fueled by an internal combustion engine, if we can start to chip away at that and get an electrify our transportation system, there's a massive opportunity for climate objectives that many cities, many mayors across this country have signed up for.
And I'll add on to that we're a group of business leaders who proudly stand up and say, we acknowledge that climate change is real. We acknowledge there's a responsibility to begin to think about what we do with that. And that was a motivating factor to be partnered with an organization like this. But beyond climate change and making sure that we can do everything we can to be a carbon neutral community over time, we're also in an economic race. So in Columbus, we are the #2 Tier 1, Tier 2 auto parts supply community in the country. We make lots of bumpers, hubcaps, and dashboards, but not as many Internet of Things that go into those cars. In 1905, we were the buggy manufacturing capital of the world. 1 in every 4 buggies was manufactured in Columbus, and by 1920, that industry was out of business because the Model T had crushed it and the combustion engine took over for the last 100 years. And basically, the cars of today don't look a whole lot differently than that Model T back then. And we think that innovation is coming at us fast. And we think the communities that get ahead of it, that are committed to it, that don't stick their head in the sand on an issue like climate change and aren't afraid of it, will be the communities that are the leaders of the future. But there's a rest of the story, because in 1906, a Columbus Buggy Works introduced the Columbus Electric. It's one of the first electric vehicles in America. It got 75 miles to a charge. It had a top speed of 20 miles an hour. Something else happened. We were innovating, but we still got crushed. We are not going to be crushed over this next generation of change that is occurring, and that's something that we're very, very motivated by in the private sector.
Great. Terrific. Thank you, Alex, and welcome, Mark.
Thank you. So when we were at DOT, we had a report called Beyond Traffic. Sometimes traffic gets in the way, and I apologize.
Before long, we'll have drones to be able to fly.
Yeah, exactly.
And drop
Personal
drop you
drones.
right here. But welcome to the panel. We're just talking about the Columbus program, as you know. Maybe a question for you to get you started right away, if that's okay.
Sure.
Which would be really about the federal perspective here in the US. If I look to some of the other countries around the world, there's very large funding behind smart cities programs, infrastructure programs. You look at somewhere like India, where there's 10 billion a year dedicated for 10 years behind 100 smart cities. The Smart City Challenge Grant is a step in the right direction, I think, here in the US. But in your mind, how do we continue to fund this kind of innovation that's going to drive real economic impact across the country? Maybe you could talk to that.
Right. So part of what we did is we did a survey as to, is there a smart city out there? And I think the answer is no. And how do you get there? How do you actually realize the dream that a lot of the cities have of using 21st century technology innovation as a way to try to overcome some of the problems? The concept that we had was we need to focus on a single city and allow that city to actually figure out what's going on. And fortunately for me, I met Spencer, who had a similar concept with regard to electrification if you focus on a single city. I think that one of the reasons why Columbus was so compelling is people like Alex and his organization, because this is not going to just be a federal initiative. It's not going to just be a philanthropic initiative. It has to be in partnership with private sector. And so to me, the idea was to show other cities the pathway, right? The pathway in order to do this. And I think the United States is uniquely qualified to do that. We have access to capital, we have the best research universities, we have most of the technology companies are here, and we have a willingness on the mayor's part, and this is a critical part, is the mayors are willing, not every mayor, but most mayors are willing to take a chance. And risk is not part of the way federal government grants, and it's not the way cities generally operate. So it's switching that paradigm slightly is another way to try to get to where we want to go.
Right, and I think the way that Columbus has attracted so much private sector investment really underlines that.
I'd add on to that. I think for us, what's most encouraging is the economic development lens through which Columbus is viewing this opportunity. We think that demonstrates to other cities that there's a formula here that actually makes just plain sense. Now, as I said, our grant is focused on the climate benefits of this transformation and leveraging technology. Paul Allen obviously looks at disruptions in marketplaces. That's how he became who he was identifying a disruptive opportunity in personal computer space. But is this coincidence with the economic development opportunity that I think is really the most powerful part of the narrative.
Right.
So an important part, though, that I think that Columbus also did well is, and I'm sitting next to Mike, is that the idea of actually solving real problems, right? That if we keep moving at smart cities as the shiny thing and trying to infuse the solutions looking for problems, we'll have it the wrong way. And I think the more you can start attaching the actual solutions that people are generating out there to solving real problems in cities, that's critical. And infant mortality rate, 4 times the national average, dropping that as a result of the work that we're doing is exactly the narrative I think a lot of companies are looking for.
Right. Absolutely. Maybe that's a good setup for you, Mike, for another question, which would be, I know it's only, 7 weeks, you said, into the job right now, but what are your key observations at this point in time in how to manage a complicated program like this? There are so many different parties involved. It has broad impact across the city, broad opportunity across the region. What lessons learned, what observations, what advice or guidance would you give members in the audience today around what you've learned to date?
So my key observation, and Alex touched on this earlier, there's some chaos involved. But around that chaos, we want to set up some structure and rigor, but we don't want to bureaucratize it. I don't even know if that's a word, but we want to make sure we're flexible enough and we can be agile and we can adjust because things are moving very fast. And the other observation, and I knew it going in, and Spencer's right about the economic development side, is we've got a lot of different parties, but Smart Columbus has helped us align all those parties into one direction to make sure we are focused on not only improving and addressing problems within our neighborhoods, but we're also focusing on future economic development opportunities and growing the economy and making sure we have a thriving, vibrant economy 10, 15, 20, 100 years from now. I think that's the 2 big observations I've taken from it.
Great. Very good to know. Alex, back to you. There's a lot of different entities involved. The partnership alone has a lot of members, a lot of private sector interests. How do you manage those relationships, the different interests across the group? What advice or guidance would you have for others in terms of managing that overall process?
Well, one lens we always try to look at is, what's in the interest of the parties that you're trying to manage. And it's, absolutely fair game for one company who may be in the logistics world to want to focus in that area, and another company who's in the insurance world to want to be working on the autonomous area. And you put yourself in the shoes of your variety of partners. So then when you have literally hundreds of partners, you have different motivating aspects, and you look for, what's going to scratch the itch of various partners. You're not afraid to say a little bit of selfishness is an okay thing, but at the end of the day, you want to have a guiding principle that says, bring your community interests to the table and leave those selfish interests at the door. But as you leave the selfish interests to the door, it's okay to want to align the kinds of activities that we're doing with the expertise that exists with those partners. So there's no scientific formula to it. I mean, collaboration is a contact sport. It's messy. And the more that you can have contact and the more that you can mix it up, it actually makes collaboration work more, not less. And so we try to find the different forums to do that. I guess, Mike, in a room about like this, in a couple of weeks, we're going to launch a series of gallery walks. And over the course of 6 months, several thousand citizens from all walks of life will have the opportunity to begin to experience and explore in kind of 3-hour workshops what the smart city of the future looks like, and to provide their input. So you go from, a mayor and a couple of leaders to then 100 collaborators to now thousands of citizens that are all having inputs and collaborating. And you can't do that and say it's nice and linear.
Right.
And I'd add, Alex is right, collaboration is messy, but this isn't the first time we've collaborated in Columbus. I mean, we have relationships built on trust, where we've done these public-private partnerships, and we've got a private sector aligned with our elected leadership, and that's important, and that's based on those relationships that matter and the trust that's been built from it.
But it is difficult. It is difficult for cities to try to get their arms around how do they transition from looking at companies as vendors to partners.
Right.
And it is not a natural state for cities, and it's not a natural state for companies either.
Right.
A lot of companies struggle with how they speak city. How do you and they tend to be a little tone deaf to some of the issues that they come across.
Yeah. And it's really difficult to sometimes create believability. When you talk about a kid that's born today won't need a driver's license in their lifetime, and that these vehicles that look like they did 100 years ago are going to rapidly change in the next 5 years, it's hard to get people to understand that, because it's in fact hard to touch that of which is still yet to be fully invented. But we know it's coming. So I think one of our big challenges is, how do you push yourself in a world that is changing ever so fast, and then, get broad groups of leadership comfortable in something that doesn't just fit neatly in a box.
Right. And that's a fascinating topic around the role of government in this, both the federal government and the state and the city as well, around helping to set standards so that the devices communicate with each other, around policy for autonomous vehicles. I wonder, Mike and Mark, whether you could speak to what the role of government really is at the heart of this, and how to tackle some of those big issues.
I'll let you lead.
Okay, excellent. So I think that one of the things we tried to do in the Obama administration was to have government be more agile, right? Try not to, particularly this grant program was a bottom up rather than top down. You don't turn around and tell everybody what it's going to be, and then you got to follow in order to get the money. Similarly, on our automated vehicle guidance, we tried to make it so there allows for innovation, allows cities to rethink based on what they have in front of them. So I think that as government looks at these areas, they have an obligation to protect the public, and that safety obligation is really important. But they similarly need to get out of the way to a degree and allow for innovation to happen.
And I'd just add from the city standpoint, there's a great opportunity for cities to innovate in their own policy making, whether it's through financial or non-financial incentives, disincentives, building codes. You've got all these tools at the city municipal level that can, make it harder or make it easier to accommodate this transformation that's coming that Alex referred to, and it's coming. So it's those cities, the public-private partnership, this sort of, integrated conversation that then allows this to, I think, take root in a way that is sustainable, that encourages economic development, that creates opportunities for all the citizens. And as a philanthropy, that's what we're really, excited to see. These cities that are taking this holistic view of the opportunity and not just taking it sort of stepwise. Oh no, here this comes. Let's think about this. Let's think about the whole picture and create that ecosystem.
Sure.
People want to talk about innovation as just happening in the private sector, but what the U.S. Department of Transportation did in fast order with Secretary Fox and with Mark and with a lot of career folks who are still back in the Department of Transportation in literally months to put a competition together and run it. What our mayor did inside of city government to respond in the matter of 6 weeks, that's now yielded this $500 million of investment. I mean, those are two great examples of government leaders innovating inside of government and doing it really quickly.
Yeah. And that strong leadership from the mayor is so important in an initiative like this, and I know that you have that in Columbus, and broad participation from across the city leadership team. All right, so I know that we're close to the end of time, so what I would like to do is just ask each of our panelists to really share one key piece of advice or guidance for the rest of the team based on the experience that you have in Columbus, because I think part of the objective for the Columbus team really is to share what they've learned. This is not a race, a competition amongst cities so much as it's everyone collaborating together for the benefit of all the cities across the country and learning together and sharing those experiences. So with that in mind, maybe I could start with you, Alex.
Well, I'll even tee off of that. We're not trying to win, we're trying to be a winner. We are not trying to beat other cities. I don't believe this is a competition to be number one. I think this is a competition to be in the top echelon. So I'm as excited about what Pittsburgh is doing with Uber and driverless cars and what Austin's doing and other great cities as I am with what we're doing. And so I think to win, you've got to be in the competition.
Right.
And I hope that we're a part of a group of winning cities that are going to help to move us forward. And I think that requires us, then the lesson, to not have a mindset of just being the single number one, but wanting to be in the group of cities and entrepreneur space that's collaborating with winners.
It's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah, I'll first comment on that, and that'll give you my advice. I would totally agree. In fact, we're convening a group of cities over the next few weeks. Columbus is going to be part of that group to really pose some questions to them as a philanthropy to say, okay, we've been through the Smart City Challenge, we've got the Smart Columbus program, those other cities that have been part of this. Where's the role of philanthropy moving forward, and how can we be of continued help to continue this catalyst opportunity? I'll be very specific in terms of my recommendation to cities. Given that we talk about electric, it's up here on the screen. If your city, your community is interested in getting ahead of the curve here on electrification, reach out to your electric utility, whether it's a municipally owned and operated or if it's a privately owned utility. Reach out to them. They are your most important ally and partner in preparing for electric vehicles, and they are coming. And if you've got climate goals, this is a centerpiece strategy for your city, for your community, to get ready for electric drivetrain vehicles. And right now they account for less than 1% of new car sales in the US. We've got to get that up to much higher percentages. So as a philanthropy, we're looking for partners.
And we've set a goal of 4x conversion in the next several years in Columbus, and want to begin to bend that curve. And it's not because it's green, it's because the electric drive engine, if you will, is superior. It's a better vehicle, and I encourage all of you to go drive one.
My recommendation would be engage your community. That's important. We don't need solutions in search for a problem. We need to understand the problems within the community and develop the solutions around that.
So to me, there is two pieces here, which is one, this is hard for a city to do alone. It is difficult, even if you have $500 million worth of resources. And the ability for Mike and his colleagues in other cities to figure out how to work together to try to actually accelerate the process is, to me, a meaningful thing. But you can't do that as long as the companies keep trying to sell stuff to the cities. That the partnership piece that really works, particularly those companies that are engaged in this area, is that you need to get the folks who actually have the capacity to make the city smarter. If you can start there with making the city smarter, and then try to figure out the commercial side of it, you'll actually sequence that correctly for the cities to figure out how to work with you. Because if you keep sending your salespeople to the cities, you're going to keep getting the same response, which is, I do not have the ability to figure that out right now. I've got this other stuff to do. If you can work with them on the other stuff to do, you're actually in the right place with the cities.
And that's a terrific note to end on. So please join me in thanking our panel for the comments today. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please be back promptly at 1 o'clock for a presentation by Dan Doctoroff that you don't want to miss. See you then.